John 2. Now, on the third day, there was a wedding in Cana in Galilee. Jesus' mother was there, and Jesus and his disciples were also invited to the wedding. When the wine ran out, Jesus' mother said to him, "They have no wine left." Jesus replied, "Woman, why are you saying this to me? My time has not yet come." His mother told the servants, "Whatever he tells you, do it." Now there were 6 stone water jars there for Jewish ceremonial washing, each holding 20 to 30 gallons. Jesus told the servants, "Fill the water jars with water." So they filled them to the very top. Then he told them, "Now draw some out and take it to the head steward." And they did. When the head steward tasted the water that had been turned into wine, not knowing where it came from, though the servants who had drawn it knew, he called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the cheaper wine when the guests are drunk. You have kept the good wine until now?" Jesus did this as the first of his miraculous signs in Cana of Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and brothers and his disciples, and they stayed there a few days. Now the Jewish feast of Passover was near, so Jesus went up to Jerusalem. He found in the temple courts those who were selling oxen and sheep and doves and money changers sitting at tables. So he made a whip of cords and drove them out of the temple courts with the sheep and oxen. He scattered the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. To those who sold doves, he said, "Take these things away from here. Do not make my Father's house a marketplace." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house will devour me." So then the Jewish leaders responded, "What sign can you show us since you are doing these things?" Jesus replied, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up again." Then the Jewish leaders said to him, "This temple has been under construction for 46 years, and you are going to raise it up in 3 days?" But Jesus was speaking about the temple of his body. So after he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the saying that Jesus had spoken. Now, while Jesus was in Jerusalem at the feast of Passover, many people believed in his name because they saw the miraculous signs he was doing. But Jesus would not entrust himself to them because he knew all people. He did not need anyone to testify about man, for he knew what was. So here we've got the establishment of who Jesus is. We have the testimony of him being the Word sent. We have the testimony of him being the one who pitched his tent, who tabernacled, who came flesh. And then we have the testimony of John the forerunner. And we have the descending of the Spirit upon him. So we can, in essence, say we have the witness of the writer, we have the witness of the baptizer, we have the witness of the Spirit. So by 2 and 3 testimonies, we know this to be the truth. Was bad, wouldn't be happening to them. But anyway, so we had all of those things and now we're going to have demonstration of who Jesus is. So if you don't believe the testimony so far, we're going to have a miracle happen. So we're going to have the very first miracle. Now, the other Gospels don't tell us of this one. They may not have known. If we are looking here, John at this point only has Jesus with 5 disciples, I'll say, because 2 came and followed him. Andrew was one of them. And then Peter came, so we're up to 3. The next day he calls Philip, who calls Nathanael. I'm going to say that's 5. Unless you think that Philip was one of the 2, like Andrew was, which some people would think. So he's got 5 disciples at this point when he goes, and they are all from the Galilee region. He has yet to call in John's gospel the other disciples. So he is there. We're going to begin to see this. So John sees it. He's going to tell the story. Wait, John's not here. But Andrew is going to tell the story. So maybe John is the other one who was with Andrew who doesn't name himself. John has a tendency to try to do that, but he often refers to himself as the one whom Jesus loved, unless you think that the one whom Jesus loved is Lazarus. We're not going to go there at this point. Anyway, John could have been here as being a relative. So John might have been here and witnessed this. So Jesus' mother was there. So we have Mary is there, and the disciples are invited to this wedding. The wine runs out. Mom comes to him and says, there is no wine left. Come on. No wine left. Okay, they're going to go into a whole thing. Yeah, I'm not going to go down that one. Okay, and he calls his mother woman, which a lot of people get upset by. The term woman in Jesus' normal, polite way of addressing women. So he addresses his mother the same polite way he does every other woman in Scripture. This is not derogatory. It's not demeaning. It's not diminishing his mother, okay? He is addressing women, but it is unusual for a son to address his mother with this term. The custom in both Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek would be for the son to use a qualifying adjective or title. It is their significance in Jesus' use here. It probably indicates that a new relationship exists between Jesus and his mother once he embarked on his public ministry. He was no longer or primarily only a son, but the Son of Man. This is a suggestion by the use of the term later in the scene at the cross between the disciple, Mary as her new son. So we have him referring to nothing wrong with this. It is a polite way of doing it. And yes, I'm in my ministry role. I'm not yet established in my ministry role. I should be referring to you as son. You're not treating me as son. You are the one who has changed the relationship. So the call for him to act is her establishing him as different than son. We could go that direction as well. So mom says they ran out of wine. Jesus replies, why are you saying to this, my time is not yet come? See, that's why I think when he says woman, he's replying because she's addressing him as a prophet, not as a son. She's addressing him as the one who can do something, not in a son role, like, hey, go run and get some, but miraculously do something. His mother told the servants, do whatever he tells you to do. So she's just like, you're going to do something, son. You're going to do something, my good man. I know you're going to do something. I've identified the problem. I know that you have a heart and a love for people, and I've raised you to have a heart of compassion, and shame is going to be brought upon our household, our family, very likely. There would have been relatives or family members or community members. So shame is going to be brought. You don't want shame brought upon. You're going to do something about that shame. So mom just says, listen to him. He'll do something. So there were 6 jars of water for Jewish ceremonial cleansing. So one of the things you need is for purification. There are purification laws. You're having a wedding ceremony. You probably want a lot of things ceremonially cleaned for the wedding. All the utensils, other things like that. I don't imagine, although 20 to 30 gallons, maybe a person could get in here, not likely. So these would have been vats for ceremonially cleaning things for your Passover, other stuff like that would be used. So 20 to 30 gallons are what we have here. He tells them, fill the jars with water to the very top. Then he told them, now draw out some water and take it to the steward. Like, this is like the least amount of work on Jesus' part. Fill it with water, take some to the steward. When did it become wine? When did it become wine? Like, somewhere in here, it does. Is it in the filling of it up? Is it in the faith to draw some out and take the water to the steward? Is that when it happens? And they did it. Is it the doing? Is it on the way that caused it? Like, I'm just asking the questions because we don't know the answer. When the head steward tasted the water that had been turned to wine, not knowing where it came from. So somewhere in before he receives it, it turns to wine. Though the servants had drawn the water, knew it. So it is plural servants who are bringing it. So, however they're drawing it, however they're bringing it to him, whatever vessel it's in, there's more than one servant who was bringing it. He called the bridegroom and said, so he does not turn to the servants to address the servants about the wine. He turns to the bridegroom. The bridegroom is going to potentially be unaware of this wine, but the steward of the ceremony, who is head over things, is in shock about what happens. Everyone serves the good wine first and then the cheaper wine when the guests are drunk. You have kept the good wine until now. The implication is you've kept the good wine, the guests are drunk. So now that they're drunk, they can't tell the difference between good and bad wine. However, you have brought good wine here. Do not let people tell you this is just grape juice. Okay? That makes no logical sense in the statement of anybody in the story here. And then, what about the be not drunk with wine? The passages that refer to being a drunk and a drunkard and do not get drunk are around continual, habitual practices or the danger that can come when you are inebriated. So you either have the perpetual, habitual practice of this person is a drunkard, they're drunk all the time, they're continually doing this. That's certainly a problem. Here we have a festival, which is a week-long celebration. That's likely. That's how they did weddings. So they're at this week-long festival. The wine has run out. It is going to be a shame and a blemish on the family for running out of wine. Jesus saves the day by not doing that, but he doesn't make cheap wine. He makes good wine. So that's how we know, because he says it's good wine, and then it's not cheap wine. So the steward isn't going to be fooled into not knowing, saying, oh, well, this grape juice is really good. He's not going to serve grape juice to the guests and think that the guests who are drunk are going to be fooled by grape juice into thinking it's wine. Okay? And the concept of non-alcoholic wine does not exist in this time period. So there's no way that there's any thinking of having it tasted like wine, but it had no alcohol. Like, quit doing backflips and twisting things to be able to support your theology around the idea that everyone needs to be a teetotaler and all alcohol is bad. Excessive alcohol leads to other things. Being a drunk on a continuous basis causes problems for yourself, as well as problems for others. So anyway, hope that makes sense for anybody that's ever hears those arguments about that, but it really does not work in the context. There's no way to make that, to be honest and say that. The people who are saying it's only grape juice are doing it to support other beliefs that they have. They're not doing it from the text. You've kept the good wine until now. Yep, it's going to get you drunk. It's really good stuff. The high proof stuff. Jesus did this as the first miraculous sign in Cana of Galilee. In this way, he revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. What was the first plague in Egypt? See, let's go that direction. What's the first plague in Egypt? The first plague is turning the Nile in blood. If he is the prophet like Moses, shouldn't the plague that he does, the miracle he performs match the plague that Moses performs? I think we're supposed to be thinking about even the blood that was in vessels, or the water that was in vessels, turned to blood when the miracle of the turning the Nile River into blood happened. Even the vessels, that containers of water, were turned into blood. So turning into wine, turning into blood, it's the same miraculous thing, taking water and turning it into something else. We have a duplication. We have a sign that he is indeed Moses. So, Nathaniel, hey, I told you, you're going to see more miraculous things than me just telling you. I saw you under the fig tree when Philip talked to you. Oh, yeah, here's the first one. I'm Moses, BT dubs. I'm Moses. I am the prophet like Moses who has come. Bum, 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 forged. The mental gymnastics some people go through to try to support bad theology as well. Yes. And I want to be called out if I ever do that. I want to be called out whenever I do that, because no doubt, whatever we get from growing up and our traditions, we sometimes accept things without thinking them through because they've been handed down to us. And there are things that other Christians don't believe. So I need to be open, and I say this regularly. I'm 100% convinced that 80% of what I believe is 100% right. I just don't know the difference between the 80 and the 20%. So I got to keep studying scripture. I got to keep listening to other people who are also studying scripture, who are better experts at me in certain things, because I'm not an expert. I look over the totality of scripture again and again and again. But someone who just reads the Gospel of John, who is a Greek scholar, is going to have much more nuance and understanding than I ever am. And one of the things that we have within the New Testament is we have Hebrew grammatical structures that are not Greek grammatical structures that are used in the writing of the New Testament, which tells us that while they are speaking Greek, they are thinking Hebrew. So they're thinking the way that Hebrew does and using it in the writing as they're doing it because, well, they have Hebrew people who are listening to it. So this would kind of be like today, if you had people writing in Spanglish, and if you don't know what that is, it's where people are both mixing and mingling English and Spanish together as they talk and write. And if you were writing this down, it would not follow Spanish rules of grammar. It would not follow English rules of grammar. It would have a mixture of the two of them, or you'd be following one set of rules and violating the rules of the other language. So it would be that kind of a thing that we have going on here. Okay, so we have that first miracle. After this, he went down to Capernaum with his mother and his brothers and disciples, and they stayed there a few days. Now, the Jewish feast of Passover was near. Wait a minute, you mean he just turned water into wine and now Passover is happening? We just went from the first plague to the last plague. We're going to jump from the first plague to the last plague. But before we do that, let me just look here at the footnote for brothers. With respect to Jesus, brothers, the so-called Helvidian view is that he preferred name after Helvidius in the 4th century theologian. The view holds that the most natural way to understand the phrase is as a reference to the children of Joseph and Mary after the birth of Jesus. Other views are the Epiphanius. They are the children of Joseph by a former marriage. Or Jerome, they are cousins. The tradition of Mary's perpetual virginity appeared in the 2nd century and is difficult to explain if some of her other children were preeminent members of the early church. James of Jerusalem, but this is outweighed by the natural sense of the words. Okay. It didn't quite go in the direction I thought it was going to. Brothers, there is no distinction in the word usage of brother and cousin. It's your family members. So both are able to be supported here. So nobody has to do mental gymnastics over this in order to say perpetual virginity, not perpetual virginity. I'm not going to dive into that today because that's not in the text. This is his mother and his brothers and his disciples. So could be cousins and it could be half brothers. It doesn't matter. It's his relatives. So he is going with his mother and his relatives and his disciples for the Passover feast in Jerusalem. That's what we clearly have going on. Imago Dei, hail, friend. How are you doing? I'm doing well, friend. You have redeemed prayer time? Absolutely. Exclamation point prayer. Let us know what you need prayer for. So the reason why the first miracle and the first plague match is if he is a prophet like Moses, he is going to do things in a manner like Moses. So in Matthew's gospel, one of the ways that Matthew shows that he is a prophet like Moses is because he has the Sermon on the Mount. He goes up on the mountain and he gives the instructions to the people. So that's Matthew's way of showing that he is a prophet like Moses. John, I think, goes a different direction and says, what is the first miraculous thing that Moses does to show that he is the prophet of God to Pharaoh? Aside from the snake throwing down and the leprosy thing, that piece being it, those aren't considered plagues. those are just hey, I have power. The first thing that he actually does is he turns the Nile red. And so that's why I think there's a parallel here. John is telling us he is the prophet like Moses. That's why he's taking the first plague. And he's saying, here is the way that Jesus duplicated that first plague. So anyway, that's what I see. And if you don't see it, that's okay. It doesn't negate anything. It doesn't take away from anything. You don't have to see that. But that's one thing that I think deepens our understanding about things. Okay, so So we're going to the Passover festival. It's a week-long festival. Jesus is arriving, and those who are selling the oxen, the sheep, and the doves, the money changers are sitting at their tables. Now, to give you a picture of what has happened, there's different levels of where people are allowed to go into the temple. There is the court of the Gentiles, which is the big place where everyone can come. There's the court of the women where Jewish women can come. Then there is the court beyond that men can go into. Then there's the Holy of Holies beyond that. So there's different levels of places that you can go. So in the court of the Gentiles, where the Gentiles are allowed to come to be in God's presence, to be able to do their piece of worship, is where all the money changers and the animals are set up. So imagine, just picture your church. If you put animals and money changers in your fellowship hall, your narthex, and this was the only place that non-Christians were allowed to come into the church, like, how would they be able to hear and encounter God there? They would not. That would be a big issue, a big problem. So he makes a whip of cords. He drives them out of the temple. He drives the sheep. He drives scatters the coins. He talks to them. He told those who were selling doves, take these things away from here. Do not make my Father's house a marketplace. So house of merchants is an allusion to Zechariah in Zechariah 14. In context, it's clearly a picture of the Messianic kingdom. The Hebrew word translated Canaanite may also be translated as merchant or trader. So he is addressing the people who are there. The fact that this is messianic could be a sign publicly that he is making a declaration of being messianic. His disciples remembered that it was written, zeal for your house will devour me. So we have difference here in this telling than my house will be called a house of prayer. You are making it a marketplace. The disciples remembering it's a house, or zeal for your house will devour me. Those are the things that they are remembering and thinking about. So zeal for your house is going to devour me. So the Jewish leaders come and say, what sign are you going to show us since you are doing these things? What things is he doing? He is declaring that they should not be here. What sign can you give us? So they're looking for him to do something that can accompany them. So Jesus has already done a miracle. He is now coming and bringing restoration to the temple, driving out the money changers who are there and the animals who are there because they ought not be there. And they're like, what sign of authority do you have for what you are doing? And his reply is, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up again. Then the Jewish leaders said to him, this temple has been under construction for 46 years, and you're going to raise it up in 3 days? They're just literalists. Notice this. They're literalists. So if you approach the Bible with the same thought process of, that must absolutely mean the physical building that we are with, maybe you're off base, just like the religious leaders were in Jesus' day. Jesus was speaking about the temple of his body. So after he was raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the sayings that Jesus had spoken. So when this is happening, they remember that zeal for your house will devour me. They are confronted by the religious leaders who they remember Jesus saying, hey, I'll destroy this temple and raise it up again in 3 days. So after he was raised from the dead, look at this, like John just throwing this out here. Wait a minute, you're jumping ahead to the end of the story, so to speak. The end of the story, he's raised from the dead. We don't even know he's just barely being, established. And you're already jumping to the end of the story as proof that what Jesus said is going to come true, which it does, by the way. No problem on you, John, there, but I'm just saying you jumped ahead. We don't even know he's going to be crucified, and he's already raised from the dead here. The audience is already going to know that too, for the most part. So there's nothing to hide with that part. It's, yep, I know what you're thinking. When I said, hey, destroy this temple and I'll raise it up in 3 days, you mean your body, don't you? Yeah, my good audience, you knew who it was. You knew what I'm talking about. You got it all. The disciples remembered it afterwards. Nobody knew it ahead of time, but here it becomes plain and clear. Now, while Jesus was in Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover, many people believed in him, in his name, because they saw the miraculous signs he was doing. Okay, it just throws this line away. They saw the miraculous signs he was doing. The issue here is not whether their fruit was genuine or not, but what is the object was. These individuals, after seeing miracles, believed Jesus to be the Messiah. They most likely saw in him a political, eschatological figure of some sort. That does not, however, mean that their concept of Messiah was the same as Jesus' own or the authors, nor does it mean that it wasn't the same as Jesus or the authors. It's only that many people believed in him. It doesn't even mean that these people are at the crucifixion in 3 years at the same celebration. So they could have believed and went home and were never dissuaded of him otherwise, and then hear the news of his crucifixion and resurrection later. But anyway, the question I want to know is, what miraculous signs? John doesn't even bother with other miraculous signs. Yeah, he's doing stuff. You've heard of what he did. He was doing that during the festival. Why? Because he's already showed who he was. Oh, but when the religious leaders confronted him, he didn't show them any signs. He told them, the sign you'll see is my resurrection. So you'll get the sign afterwards. You need to believe in me before then. You won't believe in me, but the sign will show after you put me to death. That's the sign you're going to get. But other people get to see signs. We don't know what they are, but Jesus would not entrust himself to them because he knew all people. So he's not going to trust in them because he knows all people. And he did not need anyone to testify about him. So he's not trusting in them. He doesn't need anyone to testify about him, for he knew what was in man. So this is an overall, it doesn't matter. And this is like the whole crowd. Doesn't matter who it is. He understands who they are. Some are believing. Some will fall away. He's not going to trust himself to them. In other words, he's not going to rely on them to validate who he is. He's not going to rely on them to lift him up. He is not trusting in them because they're going to be, many of them, fickle and turn away. Plus, they don't need to testify about me. I'm going to do all of that myself.